Thank you so much, sir. May I request Honorable IQAC Coordinator Dr. Babli Mandal Madam to come forward and take a seat on the dais. May I request Dr. Orla Polster, AJD and Convener of Research and Development Cell, to come and take a seat on the dais. Now, I would like to invite the Honorable Convener, Mr. Avniva Maiti, sir, to elaborate the concept note of the conference.
Good morning to everyone present, both physically and virtually. At the outset, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries, our keynote speaker, Dr. Roswin Arvin from Johannes Gutenberg University, Mainz, Germany, and our plenary speaker, Dr. Shomastri Sharma, and the chairperson of the plenary sessions, Professor Oliver Mukherjee from North Bengal University. My sincere thanks to all my respected colleagues and Honorable Principal Professor P.K. Mishra for constant support, encouragement, and guidance throughout the planning and execution of the event. We thank everyone for joining us, and we are hoping to learn from today's discussions, reflections, and shared perspectives. Now I take this opportunity to briefly discuss the theme of our conference, that is planet, text, context, perspectives, and ecology, and the relevance of such a topic and our motivation and objective behind choosing it. When the Earth was photographed from Voyager 1's space probe, it appeared as a tiny dot, which inspired Sagan to write his book, Pale Blue Dot, A Vision of the Human Future in Space. Earth's history predates that of human beings, and besides our species, it harbors all forms of life. Like every other planet in the universe, our planet is the lowest speck in the great undeveloped cosmic dark. Sagan reminds us, like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. However, viewing Earth as a planet rather than a globe is a very recent phenomenon. When we speak of the planet, we perceive all human beings and other forms alike, contrasting with the history of the globe, where the narrative revolves around humans. However, in recent centuries, due to rapid technocentric development, particularly following the Industrial Revolution, humans have become the primary agents of a geological change. Unlike any other species, those who live concurrently with us. Phenomena such as climate change, global warming, result from anthropocentric activities. Thus, atmospheric chemist Paul J. Crutzen and biologist Eugene F. Stoneman highlighted the impacts of humans as a geophysical force, proposed a new geological era called the Anthropocene. The term Anthropocene views all humans as a homogeneous group, referred to as we, which ignites a debate among social science scholars who emphasize anthropological differences related to caste, class, race, and gender, as well as caste in certain contexts. What happens when a climate catastrophe or planetary crisis, such as tsunami or an earthquake, hits the planet? Who becomes the first victims of such events? What happens in the Anthropocene to all other non-human beings, animals, and other biological communities who have been silenced throughout the history of mankind, vis-a-vis human history? What kind of future awaits us if we persist in extracting natural resources and indulging in deforestation under the guise of progress while ignoring the impacts of climate? The conference, seeking answers to these questions, aims to explore the relationship between the planet and all animate beings in various texts. It challenges us to move beyond anthropocentric narratives and to recognize the interconnectedness of all forms of life. The conference is an opportunity to reflect upon those connections through literature, theory, history, multidisciplinary thoughts. In the conference, we are delighted to host nearly 50 presenters, some of whom are participating with us online. We are pleased to provide a platform for all young researchers, students whose work and vision are vital in shaping more just and inclusive future. On behalf of the organizing team, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the speakers, presenters, and participants. May today's discussion be thoughtful, dynamic, and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an elaborate concept note. Now, may I request Dr. Indrajit Roy Chaudhary, Sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Geography, University of North Bengal, to come forward and take a seat on the dais. I request Honorable Principal Sir to welcome and felicitate him. Thank you so much, sir. Now, may I invite Honorable Principal Sir to deliver the welcome address.
Very good morning to all of you present physically and those who are online. I'm very much delighted to welcome the three resource persons of today's program who are present or is on the way. Professor Anirban Mukherjee, Professor Head of the Department, not Head of the Department, Professor Department of Philosophy of Bengal University, he is on the way. I welcome Dr. Somashri Sarkar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Gospoor College. And I also welcome Dr. Indrajit Rai Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of Geography from Bengal University. I welcome all the participants, those who are present here and those who are virtually across the world, UK, Algeria, and Germany. I also welcome the participants from Bangalore, Guwahati, Calcutta, and our own local from North Bengal University and from our host institution. Very much thankful to the department as well as Research and Development Cell for organizing such a pertinent conference, and it was essential for us to organize it in dual mode. It was not possible to invite speakers from foreign countries because of not only for financial reasons but also for time. But we are lucky enough that we have that facilities. We will be benefited, gaining knowledge through online from the participants and keynote speakers from Germany. And the title of this program, conference, Young Research Conference, and as the Department of English organizes it initially with collaboration of RRBC and IQAC, the name, text, planet, text and context, perspectives of ecology is very much pertinent, and I hope this one-day seminar will be dedicated, and the objectives for which this young research conference is organized will be fulfilled. Once again, I welcome all of you to the college and hope both it will be enjoyable and gaining knowledge for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Arnav Ball, sir, Honorable Head, Department of English, to address a special note to our audience.
Good morning to all. Respected principal, sir, our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Rosalie Joy Arvind, joining us virtually, eminent experts from the University of North Bengal and affiliated colleges, members of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell and the Research and Development Cell of the college, dear colleagues, young researchers, students, and guests. It gives me immense pleasure as the head of the Department of English to welcome you all to this International Young Researchers Conference on Planet, Text, and Context Perspectives on Ecology. First and foremost, I express my heartfelt gratitude to our principal, sir, whose continuous support and academic vision have made such events not only possible but meaningful. Thanks to the college administration also for their support. I also wish to warmly welcome and thank Dr. Rosalie Joy Arvind for joining us virtually today from afar, yet so closely aligned with our theme through her thought-provoking keynote titled "A Poetics of Looking Our Planet from the Space." This conference is the result of a vibrant collaboration of our department with Research and Development Cell and IQAC. I thank both cells and their members for working hand in hand with us in shaping the multidisciplinary academic journey. We live in a time when ecological concerns are no longer limited to sciences. They permeate literature, culture, politics, daily life. That is why this conference opens its door to all the disciplines, to allow every voice, every field to speak, to reflect, and to contribute. We believe knowledge should not be confined within genres. Our department policy has always been of crossing the boundaries to seek meaningful connections, not just specializations. As scholars and educators, we must empower ourselves and our students to be critical thinkers and compassionate listeners. Only then can we collaboratively shape the narratives of the matter, narratives that respond to the world's most urgent question. Ecology, after all, is not just about the environment. It is about ethics, it is about equality, it is about essence of coexistence. To our young researchers, this is your moment to think differently, to imagine new features, and to articulate what others might hesitate to speak. The planet needs your insight, and we here are here to listen to you. Thank you all, and let this presentation begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Babli Mandal Madam, Honorable IQAC Coordinator, to address our audience.
A very good morning to the dignitaries on the dais, our guests from outside, and my dear students. So this is indeed a very novel experience for our students because at the undergraduate level, you are getting a platform to present your studies or research on a topic that I do not know. I am not aware that such an opportunity has been presented to any undergraduate student in our state before. So this is indeed a very, very novel and a very, very ingenious, I would say, initiative on the behalf of the Department of English and also the R&D cell to give our students a platform on such a grand platform that is an international platform where they'll get a chance to interact with many international speakers as well as put forward their views on the topic. So it is indeed a very great opportunity for our students, and on behalf of IQAC, we constantly try to elevate the quality of our teaching learning. So I am really very thankful to the Department of English for taking up such an initiative, to the convener and the HOD especially. And I hope that you will enjoy the day thoroughly. Through the different types of deliberations which you will get to hear. So try to make the most of what you get today, enrich yourselves, and bring forth the researcher in you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As we have arrived at the end of the inaugural session, I would like to invite once again Dr. Ornapal Sir, Honorable Convener of RMD Tradition Mahavidyalaya, to deliver the vote of thanks.
As a convener of the R&D cell, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the cell. First, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our respected principal, sir, for his unwavering encouragement and inspirational words. As HOD of the department, I am honored to have established the conference's academic tone and contributing to its foundation. I also appreciate the IQAC coordinator for highlighting the institutional vision and the encouragement that she has initiated through her speech among the researchers. A special note of appreciation goes to the organizing team for their dedication in bringing the conference to life. And of course, to all the attendees, faculties, researchers, scholars, students, your presence has enriched this platform. Let this be the beginning of a meaningful conversation on ecology, literature, and life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, it is the moment of extreme excitement as we all are waiting for the keynote address. Dr. Rosalind Joy Irving from Johannes Gutenberg University, Mainz, Germany, have joined us. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce I request the dignitaries to take the seat among the audience.
So, can you say something so that we can hear? Test the audio once again. Hi,
We are fortunate that our honorable guest, Dr. Anirban Mukherjee, Sir, Honorable Professor, Department of Philosophy, University of North Bengal, have joined us. So in this moment, I would like to request Honorable Principal Sir to felicitate him. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, now it's the time for the keynote speaker's address. And before she begins, I would like to introduce Rosalind Joy Irving. Dr. Rosalind Joy Irving is a lecturer and postdoctoral researcher at the University of Mainz. She completed her PhD at the University of Liverpool and Zhejiang Liverpool University. Her thesis explored literary historiography in the works of Anne Radcliffe. Rosalind's research interests include 18th century poetry and prose, the Gothic, form and prospect. Her recent publications can be found in American Notes and Queries, the Nordic Journal of English Studies, and the Routledge Introduction to Poetic Forms. Rosalind has recently edited a special cluster of articles on the Anglophone novella for Archive to be released in May, and she is co-editor with Patrick Gill of an upcoming volume, The Laureates, Poetry and Public Office. So it is our pleasure to hear the keynote address from Dr. Rosalind Joy Irving. So ma'am, you can begin.
I'm just testing if everyone can hear me, and then a thumbs up or something would be very helpful.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, perfect. Then thank you very much for the generous introduction and for the invitation to join you all today. I'm very pleased to be sharing with you a small extract from some research I've been doing on prospect, which I hope fits with your planetary theme. So, an apt starting point, both scientific and poetic, and inspired by the brochure advertising this conference, is Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. My current research on the poetics of prospect, the very idea of looking out and over, surveying at times, prophesizing at others, lends itself to an exploration of that iconic image of Earth. The act of surveying is both essential to Sagan's work and the Voyager probe that captured the image of the cerulean planet. The photograph, which hopefully I can show you, the photograph offers a new sense of perspective, a sense of permanence perhaps, as a reference point, a moment in time, and a scientific marvel. Through the pale blue dot, Sagan reminds the reader of the smallness of mankind. And I quote, "So here they are, a mosaic of squares laid down on top of planets and a background smattering of more distant stars. This is how the planets would look to an alien spaceship approaching the solar system after a long interstellar voyage." His point is prophetic, as this image of Earth, an icon of our technological advancement, might allow us to imagine how the other than human and extraterrestrial would encounter the planet. But such musings are to an extent misleading. Sagan asserts that we can explain the one blueness of this little world because we know it well. Whether an alien scientist newly arrived at the outskirts of our solar system could reliably deduce oceans, clouds, and a thickish atmosphere is less certain. End quote. This is ultimately an image that gains significance through retrospection, the gaze looking back that is inherently human. This knowing gaze carries the weight of histories and peoples, environments, and things invisible in the photograph. In other words, I might suggest it is a picture captured for a very particular onlooker, the human. That is, without scrutinizing the relatively exclusive vision of those who invested in the production of such an image. In this talk, I will move from the 17th century through to the present day through fictions which confront the reader with the Earth as planet and as globe. I hope to speak to and through hundreds of years of the prospect poetic to human engagements with the world, not because they are superior to the visions of the more than human, but rather because they form an eclectic interpretation of the space we live in and through. And they might be taken as inherently empathetic. In The Arts of Inclusion, or How to Love a Mushroom, Anand Singh speaks of a series of encounters with fungi, from the forest walker to the mushroom picker to the scientist and poet. She advocates for noticing as a practice, the choice to see, hear, touch, smell, write about, and by extension understand that which is often overlooked. In the case of a mushroom, valuing the world of the fungi, including their taxonomies and the various life-giving activities that they play a role in, becomes a way to realize a democratic science and a publicly inclusive well-being. In the poetry and prose at the heart of my discussion, there is at once very clearly a human perspective and a meaningful way of looking. Descriptive texts can redeem the idea of survey, not as grounded in a sense of exclusion, but driven by a sense of inclusion, a kind of noticing which might parallel Singh's thesis. So, to begin, the origins of the prospect form, at least in the context of English literature, is generally attributed to John Denham's 1642 poem Cooper's Hill, a work invested in a historical description of England written through the scenery around the titular hill overlooking the Thames and towards Windsor, crucially from a high vantage point. Given the scientific start to my talk today, however, I would like to turn our attention to a less canonical work and to bring you the voice of a female poet in the 17th century. Frequently lampooned for her attempts to enter scientific and philosophical discussions, Margaret Cavendish is by no means an uncontroversial figure. B.J. Sokol points out that Cavendish's authorial personality may have misled critics into believing that she undertook wholly untutored forays into the realms of scientific and mathematical thought. This is because she claimed to be unschooled, unlike her male counterparts. While Cavendish may not have enjoyed the same education as elite men in her time, she was by no means unaware of the discourses of new science and philosophy that occupied 17th century theorists across disciplines. Sokol argues that Cavendish's works expose a scientific method. Quote, atomism and the use of speculative theory to direct the design of experiments are of course well-known aspects of the new science, and they certainly seem to appear in Cavendish's poetry and prose. These works attempt to tease out both the infinite and the infinitesimal. Speculation might in fact connect with Singh's ideas on noticing as we come to appreciate worlds that are resistant to the measurement of humans and on the basis of human scales. And so I bring you to the first poem today, Cavendish's Of the Many Worlds in This World, a 1653 poem which offers a very particular female elite attempt at seeing more of the world than might immediately meet the eye. It begins, just as in a nest of boxes round, degrees of sizes in each box are found, so in this world may many others be, thinner and less still by degree. In her consideration of nesting, or rather grouping, one might suggest Cavendish is creating a taxonomy of worlds, emphasizing that these might not be subject to our sense, and by implication outside of the usual tools of empirical study. Indeed, there is something lacking in the sensorial lives of the human, unable to account for the smallest worlds in our world. Cavendish goes further. Human senses are dull, while nature is curious. Cavendish also anticipates that the worlds we may never have seen are populated by creatures small as atoms. In this poem, humans are rendered much more like Sagan's alien scientist, not quite able to measure the significance of a world yet to be encountered or fully understood, seen only from a distance. We may well problematize the close of the poem in which the many worlds become something to claim and own. And if thus small, then ladies may well wear a world of worlds as pendants in each ear. But one must remember both the context in which Cavendish was writing her body of work and the possible positive implications carried with ownership. Firstly, in the late 17th century, access to the scientific was frequently navigated by male figures, as was property ownership, legal representation, and so on. The reduction of the many worlds to a decorative article a woman might wear, and notably a wealthy woman such as Cavendish, is not intended to trivialize the possibilities of those worlds, but rather to recognize an access point for women, or at least women that Cavendish sees as her peers. And this is an effort we will see repeated over the centuries. One might trace a democratization, therefore, in the act of looking through this poem, even if it's a very particular viewpoint. Indeed, Sarah Heller Mendelssohn and Sylvia Bowerbank describe Cavendish's Poems and Fancies collection, in which this poem appears, as characterized by, quote, theoretical speculations of the new science and of her intense and imaginative empathy with the world of nature. Just as the image of Earth gains significance through our connection to and responsibility for the planet, Cavendish's poem might express a constructive kind of ownership in which looking is a method of understanding and learning. The question of perspective continued to occupy artists and scientists throughout the Enlightenment. As Kevin L. Cope observes of the 18th century, the idea of distance became slippery and ubiquitous. It could, and I quote, connote disagreement in a debate, ideological contrast, separation in social rank, the proper spacing for a duel or fencing match, musical intervals, a haughty attitude, an interval of time, or a panorama. The distance associated with panorama is of particular interest to me. At the atomic scale, as in Cavendish, considering the city-like fungi of a forest, the view from a mountain, or indeed the pale blue dot of Earth from space. Interestingly, the idea of Earth as a glinting dot is not one that we should write off as purely scientific or a scientific vision. Percy Bysshe Shelley's Queen Mab, published in 1813, so the 19th century, displays compelling resonances with the photograph from 1990 that we saw earlier. Robert Mitchell suggests that the notes accompanying Queen Mab serve as evidence of the author's engagement with science, and more importantly, of his attempt to relate science to fiction in the form of poetry. The poem marks a journey undertaken by a fairy queen, Mab, and the spirit of Ianthe in a magic car. The early sections pulsate with the refrain, "The magic car moved on," and as the two women gain physical distance from Earth, they are offered a bird's-eye view of the planet. The magic car moved on as they approached their goal. The coursers seemed to gather speed. The sea no longer was distinguished. Earth appeared a vast and shadowy sphere. Like Cavendish's poem, Shelley explores the roundness of worlds. Rather than a two-dimensional dot, the poet conjures a solar system of orbs, shadowy like the Earth and unclouded like the sun. Earth sits after the semicolon, suspended as it were between clauses at the end of a line, perhaps emulating the position of the globe in space. There is an explicitly scientific tone, the idea of gathering speed towards a goal that might easily be translated into the law of velocity. As Mitchell suggests, both with reference to the poem and its footnotes, Shelley attempted to produce, quote, a very precise and true image, and to help the reader correctly interpret the scientific foundation of this image, most particularly the awful subject of the indefinite immensity of the universe. Awful there, meaning to be struck with awe. Riding in Queen Mab's chariot, space becomes an ocean of light, a black concave paralleling both the possibilities and dangers associated with the oceans of Earth. Shelley's cosmological sense of perspective is explicit. Throughout these infinite orbs of mingling light, of which yon Earth is one, is wide diffused, a spirit of activity and life that knows no term, cessation, or decay. In this early 19th century poem, we are brought to a consideration of the infinite, and by extension, that which might run out. Indeed, a question which we are regularly confronted by, and one woven into the works I will address later in my discussion, is the precarity of the planet. Shelley's poem, with its circuitous yet positive resolution as Ianthe's spirit returns to earth, offers in many ways a sense of hope, learning through perspective marked by a return. Such messages are perhaps true in Sagan's work, or can be found there at least, as it is the return of the photograph, not merely the launching of the Voyager probe, that becomes instructive and iconic. So as we make this whistle-stop tour and move towards the present, I would like to turn to another photograph of the Earth from space, this time taken by an astronaut on the Apollo 8 mission, Earthrise, 1968, which shows our planet emerging through the shadows of space and framed by the aperture of the moon. It seems to be the perfect accompaniment to the final three works I will address. As perhaps implied by my earlier discussion, to consider the planet is, I believe, to be thinking through a tension between unity and exclusivity, noticing and reflection. Denise Levitov's It Should Be Visible is a prose poem which speaks directly to this sense of an encompassing view that fails to satisfy reality. It begins with a conditional clause. If, from space, not only sapphire continents, swirling oceans were visible, but the wars, like bonfires, wildfires, forest conflagrations, flame and smoky smoulder, the earth would seem a bitter permandible, bristling with poison clothes. In stark contrast to the peaceful blueness of earth, Levitov finds fire. She asks her reader to think critically about what might be omitted by such an image such as Earthrise, for example, which in many ways works to perfect the fractures of the sapphire continents and swirling oceans. As the poem picks up speed through an enumeration of fires and then of sites of conflict, Levitov questions the efficacy and ethics of looking with an increased urgency. While describing threats posed to the planet, the poem speaks to that which should be visible to the human eye and understood as part of the human experience. Wars and weapons, sums of money, profits, destruction, distortion. Human society seems to consume the joy of this one planet, and the poem ends, it should be visible that this blue-green globe suffers a canker which is devouring it. It is left for the reader to decide if it is the capitalist world system, the discordance of the global north, or humankind itself which is devouring, or the devouring force on earth. Moving through a series of dichotomies, red and blue, peace and war, stillness and movement, Levitov paints a world inherently unstable but potentially joyous. Precarity is at the heart of our appreciation of this planet. And it is from precarity that one might naturally move to responsibility. Serenella Iovino advocates for a non-anthropocentric humanism, a humanism invested in the environment and offering a much broader understanding of the Enlightenment principle, one which is not incompatible with the more than human or the divine. It is in its openness, interrelatedness, and I quote, and inclusivity that the normativity of such humanism resides. Applied to society, this humanism becomes an opportunity to develop a dynamic identity, one negotiated through difference and multiplicity, and not one imposed by a sequence of hierarchical levels. I would like to suggest that Planet Earth by P.K. Page is an excellent counterpart and counterpoint to Levitov's image of Earth as devoured, and fits Iovino's understanding of the possibilities of humanism. Page begins with an extract from Pablo Neruda's In Praise of Ironing, which is woven into the poem as a refrain. In Page's work, we are no longer simply looking at the planet, but feeling it. It has to be loved the way a laundress loves her linens. The earth ought to be caressed, coaxed, and praised, recognized as an object of beauty, a work of art, embroidered with flowers and birds, and two joined hearts upon it. It becomes a tactile form, stretched, stroked, and celebrated. Page's insistent use of verbs across the work both create a sense of vitality and point to the activities of care that those who inhabit Earth must employ. Brian Bartlett polemically contends that, quote, our arrogant, short-sighted habits of desecrating the earth make it hard to respond to the metaphors in the poem, which compare the earth to the laundress's linens, a mother's child, a tapestry, and so on, when it might be better to consider humankind, laundry, and children. And I think this is an important point to remember, but we might be better to think of Page's poem as more than arrogance or naivety, and instead think of it as compatible with an eco-criticism that can flexibly engage with humanism. The trees must be washed, and the grasses and mosses, they have to be polished as if made of green brass. The rivers and little streams with their hidden cresses and pale-coloured pebbles and their fool's gold must be washed and starched or shined into brightness, the sheets of lake water smoothed with the hand, and the foam of the oceans pressed into neatness. One is left with an image of activity written in terms of a kind of maternal care, first alluded to through the figure of the laundress, a figure who will wash, polish, and shine the world. Under Page's pen, the earth continues to be a supple surface of pleated satin bolts of brocade. Like Levitov's construction of the seas, jewel-like in colour, the ending of the poem actually differs quite significantly. Page constructs a sacred space, burnished and rubbed by hands to loving, shining in the sun like gold leaf. The planet is the subject of angels' songs and blessings, and newly in love, we must draw it and paint it, our pencils and brushes and loving caresses smoothing the holy surfaces. And I think that is really what literature brings to this discussion of planet Earth, a redemptive possibility, perhaps. Building on the work of Satterfield and Slovich, suggests that literature and art in general can be seen not merely as representations of ideas and fictional contents, but also as representations of values. By that same token, eco-critical interpretation elicits the text's ethical messages and creates more visible cultural connections between texts, authors, and the world they talk to. Through Planet Earth, Page imagines a system of care that is not fictional, even if the practices themselves cannot be realized. By taking her words as a kind of ethic of service, we see humans as active agents in a loving and life-giving story of harmony, rather than merely as destructive plunderers who take the very surface of the earth for granted, though that might be true quite frequently. It is only by zooming out that the sea might appear like soft linens on the bed of the earth, and it is only by zooming out that the scale of our responsibility to the planet becomes clear. A humanist ethic, one which is often accompanied by a predominance of the anthropocentric, might be usefully directed towards a greater sense of noticing the spaces we inhabit. And so I move at last to the present day, to the Booker Prize-winning novel Orbital from 2023, won the prize last year, by Samantha Harvey. Focusing on the human occupation of low Earth orbit, watching streams from space for inspiration, Harvey's novel turns on the intangibilities both of a position of space, but also on questions of belonging, ownership, community, and isolation. Harvey describes the novel as a work of realism in which she asks herself, could I evoke the beauty of that vantage point with the care of a nature writer? Could I write about amazement? Could I pull off a sort of space pastoral? It is notable that Harvey characterizes nature writing as a careful activity. But what might a space pastoral entail? The human cast adrift and dissociated from nature as they are freed from the force of gravity? Are we dealing with a work of ethical imagination, born out of a high vantage point? Harvey suggests that zooming out, let me escape our web of concerns about the impact we have on each other and on the planet. The web of concerns she speaks of are those of the pandemic, when isolation took center stage in our understanding of what it is to be human. Despite the explicitly scientific situation of the novel, the sense of floating and containment in titanium vessels, organized by an accelerated pattern of dawn and dusk, the world builds on the same tradition as Denham, Cavendish, Shelley, Levertov, and Page. By zooming out, Harvey's characters notice the unity of the world, and I would like to share a brief extract with you, one of the many I could have chosen. Here is Cuba, pink with morning. The sun bounces everywhere off the ocean's surface, the turquoise shallows, the Caribbean, and the horizon conjuring the Sargasso Sea. To be out there, Nell thinks, to have no glass or metal between her and this, just a spacesuit and a piece of rope in her slender life, just her feet dangling above a continent, her left foot obscuring France and her right foot Germany, her gloved hand blotting out Western China. At first, they are drawn to the views at night, the gorgeous encrusting of city lights, the surface dazzle of man-made things. There is something so crisp and clear and purposeful about the earth at night. Its thick, embroidered urban tapestries, almost every mile of Europe's coastline is inhabited and the whole continent outlined with fine precision. The city's constellations joined by the golden threads of roads. Those same golden threads track across the Alps, usually greyish blue with snowfall. The change of day is a motif iterated across the 16 orbits of the Earth documented in the book. Harvey, like Levertov and Page, chooses vibrant hues, pink, turquoise and gold. Human senses are tested at such a height, as the surface of the sea is indistinct from the scattering of the sunlight. We share in Nell's view. An astronaut who we learn over the course of the novel is extremely attracted to the freedoms of space, the call of the void, the addictive danger of a spacewalk, where a piece of rope sustains a slender life. Prospects, while promising clarity, can, however, warp our perspective because they require a vast reconsideration of scale. Nell's hand and foot in the foreground might block out a whole country, and yet this blotting out is impermanent and therefore impotent. From a high vantage point, the characters in the novel can conceive of a panorama in which any shift, a tilt of the head, the movement of the spacewalker or the space station, or the slightest rotation of the Earth exposes a new surface. The human becomes the infinitesimal and the unimportant. The night view is spectacular, in part because it makes visible the man-made, the current of lights moving between cities in Europe, for example, tracing a map through the darkness, and the perspective of the astronauts seems almost counterintuitive to those of us on Earth. For those on Earth, daylight is frequently the most productive period, at least in a sense of wakefulness, but it's the frenetic liveliness of the planet at night that is visible to the astronauts, dazzled by urban tapestries, interestingly tapestries being carried through from P.K. Page's work. Through the darkness, Harvey also signals belonging, the ability to locate home and the pole star, as you can see in that final paragraph. It is in the darkness that human surfaces are measurable. Indeed, it is the vibrancy of humanity that confers a voice on the planet, the ability to proclaim there is something and someone here. The novel is deeply invested in the sense of community rendered by a zoomed-out perspective. However tense and compromising at times, the work between the cosmonauts from Russia and other international scientists on the space station represents an endeavor which transcends geopolitics. Distance renders earthbound rivalries temporarily obsolete. In terms of style alone, Harvey's work is undeniably poetic, akin perhaps to Levertov's It Should Be Visible, and similar in length to Shelley's poem Queen Mab. The short lines and bursts of description, while in the realist vein, seem to me deeply symbolic. The earth is jewel encrusted, the beauty of the planet enhanced rather than destroyed by the vision and activities of the human. That is not to say she does not acknowledge destruction and precarity, but rather, as if following P.K. Page's example, lovingly traces the pleats and folds of the land and the shifts of the oceanic. Harvey insistently constructs and reconstructs the view from space, trying to keep a pace with the 16 orbits of the Earth that the vessel will undertake in a given 24-hour period, from the window, through the lens of the camera, and through the helmet of the astronaut, as we've seen here. And as I come to the end of this talk, I would like to return to Levertov and her understanding of the work of poetry and writing of organic forms, or perhaps better put, the inspiration of nature and concomitant demand to write a poem. The beginning of the fulfillment of this demand is to contemplate, to meditate, words which connote a state in which the heat of feeling warms the intellect. To contemplate comes from templum, temple, a place, a space for observation, marked out by alga. It means not simply to observe, to regard, but to do these things in the presence of a God. And to meditate is to keep the mind in a state of contemplation. Its synonym is to muse, and muse comes from the words to stand with open mouth, not so comical if we think of inspiration, to breathe in. Levertov describes poetry as a bodily and physical experience as much as an act of writing, a moment of vision and of crystallization. And I would like to close with perhaps more questions than answers. Over the course of this talk, I've attempted to share various poetic crystallizations of planetary awareness and to frame the prospect poetic as an inclusive vision that perhaps demands, to borrow from Levertov, ethical reflection, not as a binary between the planet and the human, but texts which consider the entanglement of responsibilities and mutuality. When faced with a work like Levertov's, it should be visible, seemingly looking back at Earth, perhaps from the moon or from a probe in space. What is at stake in our sense of home? The frictions and machinations of societies at odds, of compromised values and a compromised environment, perhaps. And what of P.K. Page or Harvey? How might we read and write the gentleness and splendor of the world and use that as a basis to direct human activities towards care? By zooming out, but making the effort to survey, to notice, as Singh puts it, one takes in a wholeness that does not lack specificity for expanding the view, but at times jarringly and at others lovingly becomes open to the multiplicities of a stretched scope. And some of the secondary sources I've used, and that's all from me.
And I'm sure that everyone will be, like, are enlightened as she has showed different perspectives on ecology by discussing poetics of looking planet and exploring the text like Pale Blue Dot of the Many Worlds in This World by Margaret Cavendish, Queen Map by P.B. Shelley, It Should Be Visible by Denise Levanta, Planet Earth by P.K. Page, Orbital by Samantha Harvey, and some notes on organic forms. So, ma'am, thank you so much once again for connecting the planet with different texts and discussing and exploring the dynamics of the Anthropocene epoch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that your address definitely provoked thoughts to the young minds present here. Thank you all for your sincere participation. Let us now move near the canteen area, near the parking area for the tea session. And this is a session, tea break for 15 minutes. I want you all to have some snacks out there, and please rejoin us for the plenary session first and second in Kanak's Kaksha back. So see you soon.
हाँ वो तो मैं स्ट्रीम बंद कर दूंगा ना ये क्यों बंद